How's your day going?
Magnificently well. I woke up about 5 a.m. and then I wrote for a few hours and now for the rest of my day.
Lovely. You're in California as well. That always helps, doesn't
it? Yeah. So what part of the world are you in?
I'm in London, England. Yeah, it's not, we haven't yet had a summer and it's June. So it's, yeah.
I know I was once in England in September, right after they had 25 straight days of rain in the month of August, and people were nearly homicidal.
Yeah. I'd love to move down to California. It'd be amazing. Yeah, so I've sent you a couple of questions. I'll read them to you anyway.
I saw them.
Yeah, okay, cool.
But you'll need to ask them to me. I can't see them on my screen now, so...
Yeah, I will. I'll ask them to you just so you had a rough idea of the kind of things I was going to be asking. 1 second.
I'll be back in a moment.
Okay.
Good.
Good. All right. I'll just get started then I'll go through the questions. I'll just introduce you and we'll get started. Can you hear me okay? Is it clear?
Sure.
Perfect. Hi guys, it's Steve Light from Leading Light TV, and my special guest today is Gay Hendricks. Gay is a psychologist and founder of the Hendricks Institute, and you've also authored over 25 books with your wife, Katie. How are you doing today, Gay? You having a nice morning?
I'm doing extremely well. Thank you very much. Nice to be with you.
Thank you. Yeah, so first of all, I just wanted to ask you, a bit about your earlier life and what got you interested in psychology. When did it all start for you?
Well, I think part of it, I had the advantage of growing up in a pretty crazy family. And so I think that's always a great benefit for a future psychotherapist. I grew up in a family where a lot of people didn't speak to each other directly. Somebody would say, I'm angry with Aunt Audrey, but don't tell Aunt Audrey. Those kind of communications. I think at an early age, I began to wonder, what's going on here? And so later on, I think I took one psychology course in college in my BA. But then later on, I got really fascinated because I worked at a school for delinquent boys. And I saw that all of the discipline kind of stuff was not very useful unless you found some way of, connecting with their inner emotional world. And so that began to fascinate me. And I went back and I got my master's in counseling. And then later on got my Ph.D. in counseling psychology from Stanford. And so it became a lifelong fascination of mine. Kind of once I got hooked by it, I've never been interested in anything else ever since then. And I went out of my way to create a job that I would never want to retire from. And so I've managed to do that now for since 1968, so 45 years now.
Wow, that's fantastic. So you, am I right in saying that you did you lecture in psychology for about 20 years? Was that right?
Yes, I was a professor at the University of Colorado.
Yeah.
And our program was mostly a master's degree program in counseling. And so I had the opportunity to work with graduate students pretty much for my whole career. In fact, I never even taught an undergraduate class while I was a university professor, which may be some sort of a world record. But I was there for 21 years. And then our friend Oprah Winfrey called one day and said, we'd like you to come on our show. And so Katie and I had written our book, Conscious Loving, about 25 years ago. And so when Oprah invited us to come on to her show, suddenly everything kind of changed overnight because, instead of talking to 500 graduate students a year, suddenly we were talking to 10 million people at a time. And so everything changed at that point. And so we began to develop our own institute, then to develop our own seminars, and gradually left behind the world of academia, which I loved, but it was, it was hard to do both things at the same time.
Yeah. So you didn't really plan for it to, pan out the way it did? Because you say you got the call from Oprah. Did you expect to start up your own institute, or does that kind of come from all the exposure you got after that? Or
Well, we had actually started our institute before Oprah and all of that happened. We did that back in the 80s. But it wasn't very large. We would have maybe, 10 or 15 people show up at our seminars. Once we were on Oprah, then 1,000 people were showing up. And my wife, Katie, is just going off to China this month to teach. And she will have 400 or 500 people, in a city in China. And so I don't think any of that would have been possible without the television exposure early on in life.
Yeah. So what do you want to speak about your work and what you do? Because you do a lot of relationship work, and what would you say is the secret to a happy relationship? Because there's so many different ideas out there. What is your thoughts on that?
Yes. Well, we teach a particular form of relationship transformation at our institute, and it's all based on really three principles. One principle is the principle of authenticity, learning how to be your authentic self in your relationship. And that means not concealing your feelings and, being willing to say, if you're hurt, I feel hurt, or if you're angry, I feel angry. Being willing to let yourself be seen in the relationship. And so the principle of authenticity is incredibly important to our work. If you read our books like Conscious Loving or The Conscious Heart or Spirit-Centered Relationships, you'll see that throughout it all is also the principle of responsibility, of healthy responsibility. In other words, taking responsibility for the things that come up in the relationship rather than pointing the finger of blame. And so much energy gets eaten up in relationship by blaming each other. And it's very important to, as soon as possible, eliminate that blame and criticism so that you can develop your own, you can turn all of that energy into creative projects like building a life together. So the second principle is healthy responsibility. A third principle is the principle of appreciation, that we mean appreciation in several ways. One is if you appreciate yourself and you appreciate the other person, the relationship itself will appreciate, in the sense of a house appreciating in value. That very few of us would build a beautiful dream house and then not take care of it. But so many of us get into a relationship, of our dreams, and then don't take care of it. We don't do the maintenance things. We don't engage in the daily practices that maintain a relationship. And it's so sad because, Katie and I have worked with about close to 5,000 couples and about 20,000 single people in helping them manifest their relationship dreams. And it's so sad to see people kind of resist learning the things that they most need to learn. They get defensive and they dig in and they say, no, it's not my fault, it's all your fault. And so they fail to take the learning opportunities that are available for them in a close relationship. And the way we say it is either you're learning in a relationship or you're losing love. In other words, you're either learning on a daily basis, you're learning about yourself, you're learning about the other person, you're interested in the process of learning, or you're getting defensive and stonewalling and not learning and, doing the same old thing over and over again. And so it saddens us very deeply. And Katie and I have taken on a lifelong purpose of helping people change their relationships, because now we've been together, coming up on 35 years, and every year is better and better than the one before. And it started off great, but now after almost 35 years together, it's developed this life of its own, where it's kind of like our relationship is a nutrient, just like food is a nutrient or air is a nutrient. The love that we feel is that kind of nutrient. And I want that to be available for everybody on earth that wants to feel it. And now I know kind of how to get there. I feel like it's one of my lifelong duties to share how to do that. That's why I went out of my way to create a job I would never want to retire from. And so I hope to be doing exactly the same thing as I'm doing now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. We'll see.
That's so fantastic. So, anyone who's watching this, if they're in a relationship and they're, arguing a lot, what would you say to them? A lot of couples pass the blame, like you said, and it builds up into so much negativity. What would be the first step to kind of diffuse that?
The first step, let's take the subject of healthy responsibility. Almost all arguments in a relationship come from both people trying to occupy the victim position. One person says, hey, I'm not liking the way you're treating me here. And then the other person says, wait a minute, you're not the victim here, I am. I don't like the way I'm being treated here. And so they jockey for the victim position. Now, once you're in the victim position, the other person has to look like the perpetrator. That's how it looks from within the victim position. So what happens then is both people get into this argument for who's the bigger victim, and then the problem never gets resolved. There is truly only one way out of that, and that is by taking healthy responsibility. We say making the ha-hum move, where you go in from blame, I know it's your fault, to, how did I dream this up? What's my role in this? If you can get both people doing the move, you can definitely make a huge relationship breakthrough. So whenever you get stuck, notice that it's because you're trying to prove that you're the victim. You're trying to get the other person to agree that they're the perpetrator. But I promise you, they never will. They will just think they're the victim, and then they'll point the finger of blame back at you. And so we've got to stop this endless jockeying for the victim position, and there's really only one way out of that, and that's full healthy responsibility, saying, what's my role in this? How did I arrange to have this argument? What am I trying to do here? So once we begin to ask those kind of big liberating questions, then, wow, the sky's the limit on how big the relationship can grow.
Yeah, that definitely made sense to me. And just looking back, having low self-esteem myself, I'd be quite passive in arguments and kind of feel like the victim. I guess that what you're saying is that doesn't help it doesn't help the situation by being passive, does it? You need to kind of take responsibility, as you say.
Yes, many relationships are unbalanced in the sense that one person takes more than 100% responsibility and the other person takes less than 100% of the responsibility. So if that's the situation, then the person who's taking more than 100% resents it. They don't like being the cop all the time. But if the other person keeps avoiding responsibility, then the other person has to be more of the cop all the time. And so the only thing that works is if both people meet in the middle where both people are taking 100% responsibility. It's not 50-50 in a relationship because there are two people. There are two 100% entities in the relationship, and both of them need to take 100% responsibility in order for the relationship to succeed.
That's fantastic. I think that's going to help me in my relationship. I am normally the passive one, so yes, I need to take a bit more responsibility there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So just to finish things off, and one is to speak a bit more about low self-esteem and social anxiety. There's a lot of people out there who want to be with someone, but I find it hard to go and meet people. And I want to meet the wrong people, just to fill up kind of. What would you say to anyone who's, if he's shy or has social anxiety, in finding a relationship, right?
Yes. Well, in our programs, like we have a very popular program for single people called Attracting Genuine Love, and thousands of people have taken it. It's an online program, and there are 3 key ideas in it. And I'll just summarize what they are quickly because they're relevant to every single person out there. One of the first ideas, and this is so important, is you need to make a commitment to creating the kind of relationship you want. It's not enough just to want it. You need to say, okay, I commit myself to manifesting that. I commit myself to creating it. I'm going to do what it takes in order to manifest that kind of relationship. So the commitment thing, I can't stress that enough. It's so important. And in the program, you see kind of how to do that. But for now, that's how it works. The second thing that's really important, and I had to learn this the hard way myself, is I didn't manifest my magnificent relationship until I had a certain realization. I realized I was trying to find love out here in another person, but I hadn't ever really loved and accepted myself in here. And what was happening was because I didn't love myself in here, I kept attracting people that didn't love themselves in there. I didn't realize how the law of attraction actually works. And so I was trying to get somebody out here to love me when I didn't even love and accept myself. And so I had that realization one day. And really, it was a 10-second problem once I saw what the problem was. I just stood there for a moment, 10 seconds maybe, and just loved myself for exactly who I was and what I wasn't, and just loved and accepted myself as I'd never really done that before. Then the amazing thing happened. It only took me less than a month once I'd done that to manifest my relationship with Katie. It was almost like she was on hold out there in the universe until I resolved a particular issue in here. And then, whoosh, it happened so magically. That's the kind of magic I think that can happen when you make these big inner shifts inside yourself, because you don't have to make a huge shift from not loving yourself to loving yourself. It's just this big, but it changes everything. And so once I did that, then I think it was just a matter of really less than a month before Katie came into my life.
Wow, fantastic. So as you say, things are getting better in your relationship all the time. And yeah, it sounds incredible.
Well, it's been really magical the whole way, because Katie and I decided when we were in our first year together, we made some big commitments to each other. We wanted to create a relationship that ran on positive energy, that didn't have the up, down kind of thing that we'd been in before. Have a great time, create an argument. Have a great time, create an argument. Have great sex, create an argument. We were both tired of those kind of things. And so we set this intention of creating a relationship that ran on positive energy. And we didn't know exactly what that meant at the time, but what we wanted was to learn how to live and love and work together without creating all of the waves in it, with just a kind of a steady upward trend. And it took us several years to make good on that commitment. But, once we did, like, for example, we made a commitment to each other to eliminate blame and criticism from our relationship, eliminate it completely. And just as a background to that, blame and criticism are one of the main reasons people get divorced from each other. In other words, when people split up and they say, "Why did you split up?" They say, "I couldn't handle the blame and criticism anymore." So Katie and I decided to see if a relationship could exist completely without that. And again, it took us a couple of years to gradually eliminate all of our little blames and criticisms from each other. But so what? Because for the last 20 years or so, no one in our house here has uttered a single word of blame or criticism. Imagine that, and it may be hard to imagine, but it's actually possible. And it just takes a commitment and then some careful work on it.
That's amazing. That's like an uncommon impressive for a lot of people to hear that. People associate arguments as non-relationship. You've totally flipped it on its head.
Yeah, and I grew up around that myself. I mean, I grew up in an amazingly critical family, and so did my wife. Her parents, I mean, they were lovable people, but they sniped at each other constantly. I mean, it was like ding, 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 ding. And they could hardly go through an hour without bickering with each other. And I think a lot of people think that's normal, but I'm here to say, it's possible to create a life completely free of that sort of thing. And the value of that is it liberates a tremendous amount of energy to get a lot of creative things done. Like my wife and I have co-authored 9 or 10 books together, and she's co-authored a couple on her own, as well as making hundreds of videos and television appearances and things like that. So once you get your energy focused in the right direction, the sky's the limit.
Wow, that's so inspiring. Thank you. So yeah, just to finish off, you have some freebies on your website. Your website is hendricks.com, isn't it? Hendricks.com.
Yes, hendricks.com, Hendricks. And yes, I'd encourage people to go there because we have a 10-session manifestation course that you get free there. And it's 10 lessons in manifestation. And I'll tell you, every week of our lives, we get email from people thanking us for sending them that free because it's a life-changing thing. And it's so easy to do. Just take a minute a day to read that email. And it'll come to you like for 10 days in a row. And just sit down for a minute and read that. And then do the thing it invites you to do, the little activity. I mean, if you did nothing else, that would really